Hey guys, welcome to the Service Hub. I am your host, Trevor Hansen. We got Parker Williams over here co-hosting. What's up, Parker?
What's up?
And then we've got Matt Jones on the line all the way in Australia. How's it going, Matt?
Very well. G'day.
Yes, perfect. You know, us Americans, we can't handle we hear that as an Australian on the line. We're like, dude, I will hope he says one of two things: g'day, or he says mate. And I'm like,
g'day, mate.
Oh, thank you. You gave us like all our wish. And Matt, you're our first like international guest, so I hope you.
Oh wow, I've made it.
Yeah, you have.
What
hopefully I set a benchmark that can't be met.
Oh, you will.
Forward. Oh yeah,
you will. What part of Australia are you calling in from, Matt?
The northern beaches of Sydney. So you guys may have heard of Manly Beach. We're not far from there.
Okay.
Although maybe you haven't heard of it.
I haven't heard of it. All I can think of is like a bunch of manly men walking around on Manly Beach.
Well, actually, that's how it was named when Captain Cook settled. They came into the harbour there and he said, this is actually a really manly place. And then that's what they ended up calling it.
That's so awesome.
Just imagine a bunch of dudes like chucking rocks around and things like that.
Well, that as well. So there was a lot of Indigenous Australians that when they came in, they weren't too happy to see the first fleet. So they started throwing rocks and sticks at him to get rid of them. Yeah. That's actually how he died. He got killed. Not actually in Australia. He left Australia and went through Polynesia and he got killed over there.
Oh my
really?
Gosh.
Wow.
I love this side tangent.
Yeah, no.
And for listeners that are not watching or can't see us, Trevor, myself, and Matt and I are all wearing flannels.
Canadian tuxedos.
Yeah. So we're right on par with this manly conversation. So.
Yeah, we are. Definitely. We're sipping maple syrup.
We do kind of look like a boy band, and to be fair, Hanson. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, let's name it.
Yeah.
Bop.
Yes, keep going. Well, to give you guys a little bit of background on Matt. So Matt, his foundation in the service industry came from plumbing, where he ran his successful business, and then kind of has transitioned into helping other trades companies and tradesmen to be a little more successful with marketing themselves online, enhancing their online presence through the Tradie Web Guys, his own digital ad agency, and he also runs the site. I just botched the name of your podcast in the worst way possible. The Site Shed podcast. Oh my goodness. Yeah, let me just get on and insult your podcast. But no, and so he's got an amazing background, and we're excited to have him on today, share some good stuff with us. And I can already tell this is going to be a really fun conversation this time. So
Matt, fill in where we missed, and
I'll start with how we ended up in Tradie Web Guys, and then I'll move into how I started the shite shed.
So yes.
As I am a plumber, so I did my apprenticeship on the North Shore of Sydney, and I loved it actually. I was one of those, and one of our big messages at the Site Shed podcast as well is to sort of communicate to the listeners and the viewers out there, and maybe kids that are not yet in the workforce but are potentially looking into the trade survival option. To say that, I mean, the education system is very geared towards academia, and I was not an academic kid, and I wouldn't say I was stupid, but I just wasn't academic. And unfortunately, the education system, around the world really sort of targets down on, you've got to get good grades at school, you've got to go to college and university, and then you've got to go work in a job for 50 years and get a dead chook and a gold watch at the end of it, kind of thing. So that was never going to be me. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and do an apprenticeship. And I did. And it was fantastic. So in Australia, we have, if you want to do a trade, and I should clarify as well, when I say tradie, a tradie is what you guys would call a contractor. So plumbers, electricians, builders, carpenters, landscape gardeners, whatever. Basically dirty jobs, I suppose, if you want to call it that. I don't know. So I went and did an apprenticeship. It was fantastic. So it was four-year apprenticeship in order to get your plumbing license. And I finished my TAFE course, which is basically our college. I finished college on the Wednesday, and then I flew out on the Friday for North America, where I was away for 3 years. So I basically went straight to Canada, did a ski season there, then went to Colorado, did a ski season there, then went to Europe and all that kind of stuff. It's typical Australian story. We very often do that kind of thing. So while I was away, I started taking an interest in business, and I started reading a few business books. And I really, when I came back to Australia, I went straight back into plumbing, started a plumbing business, enjoyed it. But then I was learning more and more about business. And I didn't really have like a lot of education in the space. So I ended up taking a job with a company, excuse me, I got screwed over by a builder. So I lost about 50 grand and effectively, I thought, you know what, stuff this, I'm just going to go and get a job. So I went to get a job for a company that was selling a technology, which we sourced out of the UK, Europe, America, and we were setting mainly plumbing companies up with this technology to reline pipes in Australia. And while we were doing that, we had a lot of these clients that were buying trailers and stuff off us. And, they were spending $250,000 on a trailer setup. And they'd be like, dude, if we don't start selling this stuff, we're going to be sleeping in that trailer you just built me. So I was like, well, you need to start marketing it. Get it on your website. And they're like, well, we don't have a website. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So anyway, one thing, to cut a long story short, I built a couple of these guys' websites to help them market these products. And then they started talking to their friends, and then I thought, and I did it all wrong. I will admit, I totally went about it the wrong way. I basically threw the towel in. I was like, and I hated the job anyway. And I was like, stuff this, I'm leaving. I'm going to do my own thing. And so I threw myself in the deep end and totally went about it the wrong way. So for the listeners out there, I don't advise you do that. But anyway, long story short, that was back in 2012, and we started a company back then. It was called Tradie Web Guys, and we basically did websites for plumbers. And then that very quickly morphed into Tradie Web Guys. And so we were doing websites for, electricians, builders, plumbers, so on and so forth. And then we sort of got to the point where I was really keen on education, and I liked, we were talking at and presenting at colleges on, the digital related things. And we were talking at the Department of Education down in Canberra, which is a government body, which basically creates the curriculum for the education across the board. And I was representing, I suppose, the trades down there, those sort of things. And it was great. I was getting really good feedback and really good response, but it was a very small audience. And so I was kind of looking at, okay, how can I scale this to reach a broader audience and, affect more people positively with the, this sort of information. And so I did a bit of research, and then I was looking at, I suppose, my customer avatar for the digital agency. And I was thinking, to avoid a lot of the tire kickers and to sort of reach the people that we want to work with, a lot of them are kind of in that tech space, and they're wanting to be taught, and they want to be educated. And so I thought I'll start a podcast. So I launched the Site Shed back in 2000
Thank you.
February of 2016. And that's just been strength to strength. So that we hit the new and noteworthy category on iTunes within the first 5 days. We stayed there for 2 years. And we're the biggest, largest trade business podcast in Australia. And we've got a relatively large North American following, which I think is how we stumbled across each other. Isn't it? How did we get introduced?
Yeah, I actually found you on, I believe it was Tommy Mello.
Tom, yeah.
Yeah. I found you on Tommy Mello's podcast because we interviewed him recently, and
he's great.
So I stumbled there. Yeah,
Tommy, the home service millionaire.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah, he's a gun. So it's sort of been strength to strength there. Then off the back of the podcast, we've got a large Facebook community of 5,000 plus business owners from all over the world, and it's a really, really engaged group. 80% engagement. We filter a lot of people that come into there. We refuse more people that we let in. And so we got some really cool products and I suppose trainings that come with part of that community. And we run these events all over the world. Like I was telling you guys offline, we run ski events in Japan where we fly everyone over and we do a workshop and we ski it during the day. And we run a workshop in the afternoon, and we do the same thing in the Maldives where we fly groups of people over to the Maldives and we live on a boat for 10 days and we surf during the day, and then we run workshops in the afternoon. It's just really cool. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Trevor and I are both just like, let's give up everything we're doing right now and just go work for Matt.
And ski and surf all the time.
Busy bit.
You're talking our language.
Yeah.
Skiing,
well,
surfing.
it's kind of the cool thing. Once you build I mean, you guys will get there. You're only new, but once you build a bit of a following in a community, and you can kind of do things like that. Like if you want to run a workshop in the snow, you guys live in the best place in the world to ski. So it wouldn't be hard for you to do.
Seriously,
yeah.
I've got like a billion ideas going off in my head right now. This is amazing.
Yeah,
I love that, man. That's awesome.
So that's where we're at. And so today with the digital agency, we're we do a lot of websites, we do a lot of marketing, we do a lot of we work with a lot of our clients now to help them build assets. And by assets, I mean like one of the big revelations for us, over the years we've spoken and we've worked with a lot of companies that want to build in I suppose, like an exit strategy. And, when we speak to companies, and I've worked in organizations that have been very proactive in acquiring businesses, and I've worked with, colleagues that have sold businesses. And, one of the big things that, people will look for when they're looking to acquire a company is assets. They want to see, okay, well, let's talk about your database. Let's talk about, who you're marketing to. Let's talk about your customers. Let's talk about all this kind of stuff, right? And so having a framework and having a system around collating your customer database and being able to nurture them and being able to communicate with them and all that kind of stuff has proven to be a very valuable asset. And so, now with the websites and things like that, we're able to connect web forms and we're able to connect lead magnets and all this kind of stuff to technology that captures customer records. It segments them, and that is really valuable because not only does it give them visual overview of their sales pipeline, it also puts them in a position where they've got a marketable database that could one day form part of an acquisition, or be an appealing part of an acquisition. So that's been a really good focus for us. It all ties into helping them also tell their story better. And so we put a really big focus on helping them create really useful and valuable content. So they've got something that both is optimized for the search engines and is valuable in the sense that if someone calls them up and says, hey Parker, have you ever done any home renovations in blah, blah, blah? You can say, well, yeah, actually, here's a couple of links to some pages on our website, which basically show you exactly what you're looking for. And you can't make that stuff up. It's not like a standard testimonial that you've written yourself and put a photo of someone from stock image place on your website. Like it's legit. So yeah, that's been really, really effective.
That's awesome. It's really cool to hear you talk about creating assets, because we've had a lot of conversations where we talk about building sellable businesses or building a business that's worth something. And a lot of times it's like, well, what the heck is that? And having you talk about this is cool to hear. Like, well, one part of it is not just having customers that you service, but having a marketing system and process and emails collected and information collected and an ability to collect that information is really powerful and can increase the value of your business. So I'm excited to hear more and dive into this a little bit deeper and talk about maybe some of those automations and what do they look like? Like, how do these trade businesses create an automation, and can they do it by themselves, or do they need a team? Let's talk some about
So I mean, the long and the short answer is yes. I mean, like if you guys want to, I mean, there's tools out there which enable these guys to do all this. It's like anything though. We find, so we're actually in the process and we're about to launch a like a training program where, so we have built out a framework for the technology. So for companies that are like, okay, I want the CRM, I want to connect it to the websites, I want some basic automations. We've actually built out a click to go product. Basically, we say, okay, we can set you up, go here, fill this in, bang, it's done, it's deployed. And then we've got training behind that, which helps them customize their own content. So that's for people that sort of want to save money and do it themselves. To be honest with you, our experience so far, it's sort of been in beta, and most people are like, just do it for me. Like,
Yeah.
And so, which is fine. I mean, and our philosophy has always been with Tradie Web Guys, we want to empower and equip our clients to be able to do things so they're not dependent on people like us. And you see it all the time in the web design space. Like, you'll get these web design companies that'll set people up on like proprietary platform, and if they want to change 3 words, they charge them $300. You know, like it's just bullshit. We've never believed in that. So we're always really about I suppose empowering guys to be able to do the things they would need to do themselves, but we're always there to support if they want. So this is one of the reasons why we're launching the SiteShed Academy. It's so that we can really equip guys with basic training for things they shouldn't necessarily need to depend on other people for, but if they want help, then it's there, you know.
Right. And for those, you know, and that's really cool and empowering, because it puts the power back into the business where it should be. And I'm thinking, for those who are listening to this, maybe a little bit newer to the business space, they know their trade, but they're, like you said, you know, you weren't super knowledgeable when you were in plumbing about the business side until you got into the marketing. When we use the word automation and we talk about building a database, what is automation for the kind of the novel non-business minded tradesmen out there?
Yeah. Okay. So when you talk about things that you guys are doing within your business, and this is relevant to anyone, it's not specific to trades, it's, you know, any vertical, you know, typically our day is made up of things that we need to do to run the business. And there's a saying, and I'm paraphrasing this, and I'm almost 100% sure I'm going to screw this up, but you either you delegate, you delete, you automate. There's one other. I told you I'd screw it up. So the purpose of that is, as business owners, like, we do things within our business which we know our time is not most productive spent doing that task. Mm-hmm. So for example, you know, you might be doing all of your accounts, or you might be doing your reconciliation, or you might be doing all that kind of stuff. And, you know, okay, realistically, like, I shouldn't be doing this. I should have a bookkeeper that's doing this for me, because the time that I'm doing this reconciliation, I could be out chasing sales or following up leads or sending out proposals or whatever that might be. I might be on site swinging hammers, whatever. Like, you know where your time is best spent within your business. So understanding that, first of all, is really important. Then what you can do, and so this is actually what I've just been teaching at the recent trip we had over in the Maldives, like understanding how your organization structure looks, your org chart. So, and by that I mean, okay, within a business you'll have departments, and every single business on the planet has this. And whether you know it or not, for all you listeners and viewers out there, this applies to you. So every single business out there has departments, and within the departments you have roles, and within those roles they have responsibilities. And so at the moment you might be a one-man band, and you are across every department, and you're doing every role and every responsibility, and that's not uncommon. But understanding what those departments' roles and responsibilities are, so that then you can farm out and you can outsource, or you can bring people in to replace you in those areas, is absolutely paramount. So when we look at replacing ourselves in areas of our business, sometimes that involves people, and sometimes that involves technology. And technology is a really good way to reduce costs and overheads in the space of staffing and, outsourcing and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest with you, sometimes there's technology that can do it a whole lot better. And so when we talk about automations, we're talking about technology which can help you automate some of those processes and automate some of those tasks, roles, responsibilities. Mm-hmm. So for example, if you've got a if you're say a builder or a carpenter or whatever, right, and you send out a proposal, like we know statistically that the biggest bottleneck within most of those guys' businesses, and this is through our own research, and I mean you can pretty much go and ask any of them, and they'll probably tell you the same thing because we very regularly survey them. The biggest bottleneck they have is following up correctly. So we've built out an automation which once they send a proposal out, they can apply a trigger to the customer record, and there's a technology and an automation that does the follow-up for them. Mm. Okay, so that's one example of an automation. But there's many different examples of automations. It doesn't always have to be focused on your customer. So if you're let's say you run a service-based business, and you're an emergency plumber, or you do block drains or something like that. I mean, one of those automations could be in 2 months' time, send yourself an email or send yourself a text message which says, hey, go and reach out to Trevor about the block drain situation. We probably need to go out there and clear it again before it blocks again, you know? So it kind of ties into what you guys do with your service agreements. You know, it kind of complements that very well, because you need to have, obviously with a service agreement, it's very heavily focused on communication.
Yep. Yeah. If you're not front of mind, like we're human. We just forget things, and we're busy.
That's right.
Day in, day out, like everything going on in our lives, like these homeowners and these customers, like they just forget and they don't know. And so, yeah, right. Being front of mind is super powerful.
And the service agreement without automation, without technology, is an impending disaster. Mm-hmm. It is. It would be an absolute punish to try and run something like that without some sort of technology there. So there's many different ways when you talk about automation that that it can apply. But typically, we like to focus on automations in the sense of education and nurturing. So when somebody comes into a sales pipeline, what does that look like? Like, how do you educate people and move them through your sales pipeline using technology and automation tools, which means that you don't physically have to be in there sending emails every day. The technology and the tools do it for you.
Yeah. And, Parker was just describing to me, speaking of the pipeline and automating that process, for some of our listeners who aren't as familiar, when we're talking about a sales pipeline or like a sales funnel, it's basically a series of steps of engagement in which a customer will find you, and most of the time it's going to be online, and they go through a series of steps, maybe filling out a couple of forms, and they essentially join your database. Their information is in your database. But Parker had an interesting insight. You were looking for recently HVAC businesses that had good online pipelines. What was your experience?
Yeah, no, I spent 3 hours actually yesterday just researching a bunch of different service businesses and how are they, currently marketing. And be honest, like there's not that many out there that are that great. Like I was kind of bummed because I was excited to find one that was like really good that I could learn from, but I just wasn't finding one. But I came across one that kind of intrigued me, and they you'll find this interesting, Matt. They're tapping into kind of like what's going on now. And here in the U.S., we have I think it's like National First Responders Day, where we celebrate and set aside a day to like thank those that are first responders, so firefighters and police officers, right? And this particular HVAC business is running a campaign right now to pixel their audience. So they're giving away a free furnace to a first responder, and you have to nominate somebody to enter them into that giveaway. And so pixeling, I don't know if anyone knows what that means, but basically if you respond or message or react or even comment on that post or that ad on Facebook, you're now a part of that HVAC's audience, and they can run ads to you down the road, and you're now somewhat of a warm audience because you've seen what they're doing, you like what they're doing, it's made an impression in your life, and maybe you've entered somebody that's a first responder. You're going to be much more likely to respond to an offer, like a $49 checkup. And I just thought that was awesome. That was a good front end.
So what you're talking about there is the creepy yet awesome world of remarketing or retargeting.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically for the listeners out there, when you visit and the same applies for Google, you know, when you're in that situation where sometimes you might land on you might go visit somebody's website, and then you go to Facebook and then you start seeing all these ads for the website you've just been on. So that's called remarketing or retargeting. And it's like Trevor was just saying, you can apply a pixel, which is basically a snippet of code, to your browser, and then whenever you visit somewhere, it follows you around and it just places ads that are relevant to what you've been looking at and what you've seen. So it's kind of creepy. It's pretty invasive, but from a marketing point of view, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's effective. It works.
And I think, you know, especially in the trades industry, if you start out as an owner operator, your world is only as big as like your van and your phone and like your brochures. And I think taking this idea, Josh Latimer, we had him on our show, and he talked about, you know, there's gold in the hills. And I almost want to convince all the tradies out there, to use the Australian term, that imagine that customer journey. They don't just come to your website, see what's going on, but they come to your website, find something engaging, offer up their information. Their information goes into your system. You then send out a series of emails, you know, offering them some value, some content. And all the while, this is happening. If you've done it right and you set up the automation essentially without you, you're not doing anything. All of this is an invisible team working for you.
So what people need to understand is, and this is like really important, excuse me, understanding that journey. And if you've got like a business, or if you're in an industry or a vertical where you have what we would consider a longer sales cycle. So a longer sales cycle, for you guys out there that don't know, it would refer to, say, if you're a builder and you do project-based work. So you've got like, maybe you do home renovations, or maybe you build decks, you do pergolas or something like that, right? So it's not like an emergency service. So emergency service is a small sales cycle. You go, oh, my toilet's blocked. Let's call the plumber. And he comes out. Like, that's like a bang, instant, you know,
Customer,
yeah, it's a really short sales cycle. But a longer sales cycle normally refers and applies to larger ticket items. So, you know, when you've got like a home renovation or a new home build or something like that, you know, people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on those things, as opposed to a block drain where they might spend a few hundred. So that sales process is a lot longer. That sales cycle is a lot longer. Normally the ticket item is a lot longer. And so what we find is, and it's really common, so if you are the guy, and I'll ask you guys, so you've got two builders, right? And two builders have quoted on the same home renovation. Typical sales cycle for somebody that's investigating a home renovation could be anywhere from 3 months up to 2 years, if they're serious, you know? And during that time, what people are looking for is information. They're trying to educate themselves about best practice. They're trying to educate themselves about the right providers, so on and so forth. So if you're builder A and you send out a proposal, and you don't do any sort of follow-up or any sort of education in the back of it, or if you're builder B, who you send out a proposal, and then during that period of time where you've sent the proposal and the customers come back and they've engaged, or they're ready to seriously take that conversation to the next step, if you've educated that customer about best practice, technology that's available, all these kind of things, like useful information, case studies, project galleries, so on and so forth. Like, it's an absolute no-brainer that you're going to go back to the builder that's invested in educating you, as opposed to the guy that's just sent out a proposal. So this is the biggest thing that people don't, the companies out there are not doing well. And it's something that we're so passionate about helping companies do better, is helping them educate and nurture those leads and those customers from the time they come on board as a qualified lead. So we would call them a qualified lead, someone that you've sent a proposal to, right through to the point where they become a client, you know? So it's quite powerful, and it doesn't very rarely, and this is another big misconception. People think, oh, you know, email marketing, for example, it's all about ramming promotions and discounts and sales and stuff down people's throat. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, no one gives a shit about that stuff. People want education, and they want to be treated with respect, and they want to be treated, you know, they want to be sent info. They've come to you for information. So give them freaking information.
Yeah. So give it to them. Right. So Matt, fill us in a little bit. What is kind of the first steps you take when you guys onboard a new customer and you're teaching and educating them with this? What are those first steps look like?
Okay, so this is something that over the years we've refined, and what we found was having this conversation initially when somebody comes to us and they say, hey, you want a new website, having this conversation is too far down the track for them to comprehend. They don't understand it. They're like, and it was actually negatively affecting conversions because we've all of a sudden gone from, okay, you need a website, to all of a sudden we've gone to, oh, we've got a website, we can build automation, we can send emails, we can do blah, 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 we can put your database. And people are like, whoa, what? Shut up, forget it.
Yeah.
So there's kind of two different ways that we approach it. And we kind of got to be discerning with who we're speaking to and at what stage of the business they're in. So if somebody comes to us and they're relatively new, very often they won't understand or appreciate the value of having that asset created. So in a lot of situations, we'll connect the asset to, we'll connect the technology to the website in the setup process so that it starts collecting data and collating data and segmenting and all that kind of stuff. And then 12 months down the track, they'll be like, hey, we're ready to, we want to do some marketing. And we'll go, oh, well, perfect. We connected this 12 months ago. This is all the information and the subscribers that you've already got. So now we've got something we can market to. And people go, what? So that's kind of cool. Otherwise, you're starting from scratch. On the flip side, for people that are ready and they understand that little ecosystem and how it works, then we can basically set them up with the tools ready to go, and we can start implementing and delivering on things like, automations. And I don't like using the term sales funnel because I feel like it's a bit cliche, and I feel like it really it talks about, like it's got that negative connotation where people are like, oh, it's just about selling people shit. And it shouldn't be about selling people stuff. It should be about like educating and nurturing. And if you look at sales funnel, like a sales funnel or a sales pipeline that's built out the right way, it's like the higher converting ones are very focused on that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super powerful. So I've got another question. This is kind of switching gears here. I want you, Matt, to think of your most successful customer in regards to marketing. Go ahead.
I mean, success means something different for everyone, right?
Correct.
So for somebody, I mean, and I'll use some really common scenarios here. So success for an emergency plumbing company is getting, 4 or 5 jobs through a day in, using Google AdWords or Google Ads, something like that, right? Success for a builder, like all of our builder clients are pretty much booked 12 months in advance. They don't need more work. Success for them is being able to educate, create stories, tell their story better, and nurture people that are coming to them and nurture them throughout that, exactly. So that's kind of where it's a little bit different.
Awesome. Yeah. Let me,
someone just joined the call over there.
Yeah. It's hard to not. It's my next phone call.
Oh,
but we're good. We can keep chatting, keep going. Sorry. I'll shoot a text off to them and tell them to get off. Just kidding. We were talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, so success can look very different for different companies. It really depends on what your goals and your motivations are.
Absolutely.
But I can say that if you look at like recently, even things like if you look at SEO, right? Like we're really passionate on SEO for companies, and I firmly believe, and I've been saying this for years, even before we had SEO as a service, any bit of content that you create should be created with SEO principles behind it. And I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty of that and bore your listeners out there who don't really understand the fundamentals of SEO. But there are certain things that you should apply to content which should make it stick out on search engines and in searches and things like that. And so, regardless of what that looks like, there are certain things that should be done. I firmly believe, with any sort of content that's being created.
Totally. So I guess in regards to that question I was getting at is like success. What I mean, everybody kind of knows their term of success, right? Like you and your business, you know what you want to achieve. And so I wanted to kind of pick your brain in regards to like, when you think about your guys' customer base or people you've worked with that you've helped achieve their goals and what they've wanted to achieve, what differentiated them from others that you maybe have worked with that just didn't get it, didn't implement it, didn't do a good job at it, or weren't successful at it in their terms, right? What differentiates those people?
So I think people that are like the people that get the best results are the people that are willing to learn and implement. Now, for that to happen, there needs to be a bit of a process behind it. And so we've got a business training program called Tradie Mate Pro, and it basically takes people step by step through the process of building a successful business. We find that people that are put into that environment, they're surrounded by other people that are succeeding, and their success rate is ridiculously high because they're in an environment that promotes and I suppose surrounds them with success. On the flip side, people that rock up, they show, I just want you to do everything, I'm not interested. That's fine, except it doesn't really, it makes it tricky when you're trying to, I suppose, communicate the journey because they don't really care. They just want the result. It's like, they're trying to, become Santana without taking guitar lessons. And so it's kind of, and which is fine. Like, and I'm a big believer of you don't have to become the expert in everything, but it's important to know a little about a lot and a lot about a little. So, if you can understand the fundamentals and understand the basics of how things work, and you can educate yourself in those spaces, then that will serve you well when you're going down the path of what might be success for you: lead generation, lead conversion, copywriting, or whatever, and it's one of the reasons why we launched the podcast too, because we just want to give people education across the board to teach them enough to be dangerous. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. I love that.
Did I answer your question, or did I just dance around it?
No, I mean, I wasn't really quite looking for an answer. I was just more curious what you've seen, with your customers and the people you've worked with and why they're successful. And I think that go ahead.
Luckily, and by design, I won't say luckily, but by design, the customers that we work with, as I said before, are people that want to be educated. Like, we get most of our work come through the podcast. And so we know the people that have come through the podcast are people that are already out there educating themselves, and they already want to take their business to the next stage, and they're willing to invest in learning. And so when we can kind of plug them into our programs and we can say, okay, well, here you go, like, it's kind of a revelation for them, and it's refreshing because they're like, well, this is great. We're being taught how to do this along the way. So that's kind of, that's like one of our big qualifiers. And that's another thing we're really big on too, is like qualifying customers. I mean, our own definitely, but then, for our clients as well, especially if you're, what we found with a lot of our builders, for example, like, they'll get people that are coming to them who will say, yeah, look, I'm looking for I want to build a new house. The builder will go and spend, 2 hours, talking to them, preparing information, visiting them on site, all this kind of stuff, only to realize that they haven't even got, development application or structural drawings designed. So, they're not ready to have that conversation, and then they're not deserving of that amount of time to be invested in them at that point. So being able to qualify your customers and being able to qualify your leads to the point where they're ready to have that conversation, they're ready to take that amount of time that's required to get them to put a deposit down, like, that's really important. So we're big on it. We do it ourselves, and then we do it, with a lot of our clients, we set that up for them as well. So we're saying, well, how do we qualify the leads you're currently getting so that by the time they actually you have the phone conversation with them, it's bang, ready to pull the trigger, put a deposit down.
I love it.
That's interesting. What do you see like a trend in certain types of qualifying actions that you're like, hey, these are the kind of the steps? I mean, what do we look for?
I mean, if you're talking like project-based work, then certainly things like a huge qualifier and a big topic of conversation in our community is charging for bids. So, if a customer's not willing to, when it gets to the point of actually doing a bid or a proposal or a quote or whatever you guys want to call it, they're not willing to pay a deposit for the work that you're putting into that bid or proposal. Typically, they're what we call a tire kicker. So, they're not really, are they the best customer for you? Probably not. Like if you know you've got to go and spend 2, 3, 4 days preparing like this detailed proposal, bid, whatever, and they're not willing to put down money for you to go and do that for your time, then that's a big red flag. So that's one example. And then from a service-based business, if you look at the upfront pricing model or the flat rate pricing model, which might have a service call fee or a call out charge or whatever you call that, someone that's going to balk at paying $80 over the phone for you to show up on site, like that's another disqualifier, So these are things that will help you with conversions. If someone's going to say, yeah, sure, I'll pay $80 over the phone, just come out and, then give me a quote to do the job or whatever, and then they'll deduct that off the price. And that's kind of, that's covering your time to get there, but it's not putting them in a position where, they're necessarily obligated to go ahead with the sale, but they're not wasting your time,
Yeah. I love that. I think it's really just taking it to the next level of like, you're not just generating leads, you're nurturing them, you're helping them progress through a customer journey. I love that term that you use, the customer journey that most people don't think about, right?
Here's the paradigm, right? So a lot of people out there, and they come to us every day, like all the time, and they'll be like, we need more leads, we need more leads, we need more leads, we need more work, we need more work. And when we look at it and we dive a little bit deeper, especially through the Tradie Mate Pro program, when we jump in there and we see, what their sources of income are, like where the business revenue is coming from, and then we look at things that contribute to that, like how much labor or how much resource they need to apply in those any given areas, different areas. Sometimes the area which is turning the most revenue is the one that you want to cut because it sucks up so much resource and it's not as profitable as the others.
Yeah.
And so that's a big paradigm shift when you say to people, well, we effectively want to help you. Sorry, just had to fit there. We effectively want to cut your annual turnover in half, but by doing so, we're going to double your profits. And people go, what? I'm like, yeah, here are the figures. You gave them to me. We're looking in your accounting software. This is how it is. And it's a massive revelation because it's very often, you look at like the Pareto principle and all that kind of stuff, your 80-20 rule. And, you look at, sometimes 80% of your, 80% or 20% of your, revenue comes from 80% of your, hang on, I'm screwing this up. You guys know what I'm talking about though. Right?
Yeah. So,
when you look at that, you look at, okay, well, hang on, this is generating 80% of my work and the money coming in is coming from 80% of these people. And it's only taking up 20% of my resources. Whereas the one that's taking 80% of my resources is only paying me 20%. Mm-hmm. So let's cut that. And then you're in a different position, So it's quite a revelation. And when you're talking about, people say, I want more leads, I want more leads, I want more leads. And we say, well, no, actually you want less leads. You want far less leads. You just want more of the right type.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And that's something that kind of pinged me when you guys were talking about, when you were talking about your Facebook group. You're like, yeah, I've rejected more people than I've accepted in my group. And then you talk about, charging for bids. And some people might look at both of those things and be like, no, man, like I want everybody. Like I want as many opportunities. But at the same time, man, you're just wasting your time with somebody who's not warm, who's not going to progress. And it is for a guy who doesn't feel like he has enough leads to cut some, feels like a scary principle, but I think in the long run, it's totally worth it.
I mean, for the guy that doesn't have enough leads, and this is another thing, right? Like if you look at conversion, okay, so we get people that say, oh, we know we've got I mean, even when we're running Google ads, you can see how many clicks and things people are getting, and you look at the conversion off the back of it. So how many leads are converted? We can't control that because I'm not there to answer their phones for them, right?
Mhm.
But, you can see, okay, well, you're getting this many leads, getting this many clicks, getting this many impressions. Why? We don't need more leads. You just need to improve your conversion. And when you look at like a website, for example, like if you say, okay, well, we've got, a website that it's currently converting at 5% or whatever. So basically we need 20 leads to come through to convert one customer. And some of these verticals are highly competitive and expensive spaces to be competing in. Like you're looking at, in Sydney here, like Block Drain Sydney, for example. I mean, you might be paying $70-$80 per click, like it's quite expensive.
Yeah.
And so if you look at your conversions and you're converting 1 in 20, and you look at the lifetime value of your customer, you're like, well, for me to win this job, it's going to be a loss leader significantly. I need to be spending, a lot of money, maybe $1,500 to get one $300 client in, which doesn't really make sense on paper. So if you can look at conversions and you can say, well, instead of talking about getting more leads, let's talk about improving our website conversion from 5% to 10%. Effectively, you're getting the same amount of leads come through, but you're doubling the amount of work you're getting just through conversion optimization. So there's a lot of things there that need to be taken into consideration. And there's a lot of paradigm shifts there in people's thinking, which is no fault of their own. It's just a matter of understanding the dynamic of that, that environment and how that little ecosystem all works together with your lead generation, your lead nurturing, your conversion, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, before we kind of close it up, I got one last question for you, Matt. What is your favorite marketing tool you guys are using? Just really proving.
Yeah, I'm really big on. So we resell a product called Active Campaign, which is a CRM automation platform. And it started off as, I've been using it myself for years. And then we've recently started to really appreciate the significance of implementing that into a business so that they can see, first of all, their sales cycle, second of all, nurturing customers throughout that sales cycle, and then implementing things like automations. And then from a customer record perspective, being able to segment your lists and your database into different lists, and then having different tags apply to them that are relevant to things they're interested in, like that can prove very valuable when you want to run campaigns and things like that. So, for example, if somebody comes to you and they're interested in a home renovation, having data in your CRM which says, okay, well, they came in at this point, they downloaded this ebook from our website, they have these tags applied to them: home renovations, new decks, pergolas, home extensions, so on and so forth. But we know they're interested in this kind of stuff. So then if we can really double down on marketing towards them or promoting towards them. So that's been a really, really valuable tool. So I definitely say like Active Campaign at the moment is one of my hot favorites.
I love it.
Yeah, we use Active Campaign ourselves.
Yeah, it's a good tool.
Yeah.
So the cool thing is as well, because we resell that product now, we set up and deploy these accounts for companies which have built-in proposal follow-up sequences and all this kind of stuff. So they come on board and we go click, bang, deploy, done. And then they're like, what? And then we can get in there and we can customize it to suit their business. So
Wow.
it's insane.
That is insane. I don't think people realize, maybe they do, but when you get into Active Campaign, it's like an empty slate. And so what Matt's talking about is huge. Like to be able to purchase a pre-templated software that's specific for your industry or your business, like that is awesome. So
I mean, to have all that, I mean, and it's constantly being refined as well. But I mean, over the years, we started with really basic setup, and then, we're like, okay, well, now let's look at automations. So then we click, build out automations, and then we're like, okay, well, this is really cool. Now let's look at, the deals pipeline, sales pipeline. So we're like, okay, well, now we can create deal stages. So now we can. And then it got to the point where we're like, okay, well, now that we can resell this product and we can deploy accounts, what would be valuable to our customers? So we're like, well, we'll put this in, we'll put this in, we'll put this in. And then so now people come along and they go, okay, basically click and go. You've got, you've got the the deal stages, the sales pipeline built out. So you can put people straight in and you go, okay, now we can get instantly, you can get a visual overview as to anybody that comes into your sales pipeline throughout the entire sales stage. And then you can say, okay, well, now we've got automations that are set up. So every time I send out a proposal, I can apply a trigger to that customer record and they will get nurtured through an automation sequence. So the technology does all of the follow-up and the heavy lifting for me. So, I mean, even those two things alone are just worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you think about the cost of that versus hiring somebody to do that same job. Like,
I mean, we've charged 5, 10, 15 grand in the past for building out sales funnels, and now we can click and deploy it. And we've got training, which is about to launch through the academy, which will basically help people customize their own journey. So it's a no-brainer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
Well, Matt,
and we're talking, and you know the tool, it's not expensive. It's like,
no,
a couple $100 a month. It's nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Matt, we appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing some of your knowledge and skills and just your input in the industry. And it's really fun to have an international guest as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's very similar to the US, obviously. And so for our listeners and wanting to learn more about Matt and what he's doing, where can they go to learn more about you?
Yeah, well, if you want to tune into the podcast, it's The Site Shed, as in the site shed on your job, not the shite shed.
It's a different shed.
Yeah, it's a different shed. Exactly, it's a different shed.
You don't want to go there.
So that's thesiteshed.com. That's available on any of the podcast platforms that you want to listen to, and it's a video podcast as well. So if you're part of the Facebook group, so you can head across to Facebook and you can search the Site Shed private groups and answer the questions, and you'll be let in. If you don't, you won't be. And then you'll be part of the community there as well. So there's 5,000 plus global business owners in that group, and some of the conversations are next level. So it's really good. That's probably the best place to get hold of me. If you're after digital solutions, tradiewebguys.com.au. It's TRADIE web, WEB guys, GUYS.com.au. So that's the digital agency. So if you need anything that we've spoken about is of interest to you, just fill in the form and we'll have a chat with you.
Awesome. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the show. Everybody, thanks for joining us today for this episode. Trevor and I are really enjoying this. If you guys are enjoying it as well, please head over to iTunes, give us a rating and review. Tell us what you think. Tell us how we can improve or topics that you might want to hear more of, and subscribe. We're on every platform out there. So if you're listening to podcasts on iTunes, Spotify, whatever it is, we're on that platform. Also, if you know of anybody that you'd like to hear on the show or feel like would be a great interviewee, shoot us an email, parker@curry.io or trevor@curry.io, and that's KURRY.io. Thanks for joining us, and tune in for next week's episode.